In this video, I will explain who Allan Kardec was and his importance to the world, even though few have heard of him. The contact between humans and the spiritual world has been happening in humanity since the beginning of time. There are records of possessions by so-called demons in all the ancient civilizations of the world, but it was only in the 19th century that the world began to understand how spirits worked, why spirits come into contact with people here on Earth. This only happened after the works of Allan Kardec. But did you know that he didn't believe in any of these things? Who was Allan Kardec? Some people say he was the man who created Spiritism or spiritualism. But was he? Let's find out now. Was he the man who invented Spiritism? In the way he understood it, it wasn't about inventing Spiritism. Allan Kardec, born in 1804, died in 1869, considered himself the codifier of the idea, which for him was not a religion, but rather a doctrine compatible with Christian religiosity, and mainly with the science and philosophy predominant in 19th century Europe. Kardec was the pseudonym adopted by the Frenchman Hippolyte Denizard, a notable educator, teacher and translator, when he decided to systematize the research he considered scientific about paranormal phenomena and mediumship. He chose the name after an experience in which a supposed familiar spirit had revealed a previous life to him among Celtic druids in the region of Gaul. Hippolyte Denizard was born into a Catholic family and from a very young age dedicated himself to studies, especially philosophy and sciences. When situating his intellectual journey, it is necessary to highlight the academic context, as his contemporaries were the naturalist Charles Darwin, who presented the theory of evolution of species, and the philosopher Auguste Comte, formulator of positivism. After completing his bachelor's degree in sciences and letters, Kardec began working as a translator, teacher, and educator. He was an enthusiast of the democratization of education and even offered free classes in his own home in Paris. In 1854, he heard for the first time about the so-called turning tables, mediumistic encounters that were fashionable in France at that time. Initially skeptical, he attributed the phenomenon not to a force of supposed spirits, but to a magnetism influence. However, when he began attending these meetings out of curiosity, he became convinced that there might be something more to it. He started to systematize a scientific method to, in his understanding, prove whether there was fraud or not in these spiritual sessions, so to speak. He established a series of questions that were asked to the mediums incorporated by spirits. Likewise, he attended different spiritualist meetings with different mediums and repeated the same questions in order to seek coherence in what was presented to him as the work of spirits. Already convinced of a supernatural influence, he published his first work, The Spirit's Book, in 1857, considered the founding landmark of Kardecist Spiritism. And there, he began to assume the pseudonym of Allan Kardec, in reference to his supposed past life, but also as a way to differentiate his spiritualist career from his work as an educator. It is because of this theoretical foundation that Kardec became so important. Some say that, after all, if spiritist manifestations were already narrated and sessions with mediums were already happening, Allan Kardec didn't invent anything new, but he put a method on paper and sought to explain what he saw in his own way. That makes absolutely all the difference to me. I don't think he's a saint or a divine being, which is what many Spiritism followers say or think. Even because Kardec had his flaws, he was a human being. But yes, he has his merit, and his work should not be belittled or ignored. Throughout history, many supposedly mediumistic phenomena of communication with spirits occurred. And many fraudulent ones too, as at the time, it was somewhat fashionable. And many shameless scammers tried to take advantage of it to make money. Kardec, who became known as almost a founding leader, the codifier of Spiritist doctrine, was not a developed medium. He didn't have his mediumship developed, but his curiosity led him to become the first to systematize, let's say, from a scientific point of view, what mediums were doing. To write his fundamental books of Spiritism, he began attending sessions with different mediums, applying systematic questions and compiling them. These were questions to the supposed spiritual world of all sorts of cosmology, about the fate of the earth and men. Allan Kardec would continue to research and write basic books of the new doctrine, having published 5 works until 1868. They are considered the Pentateuch of Spiritism. I'll leave some of these books in the description. He deepened the doctrine. His merit was to have asked the questions and systematized them. When he died at the age of 64, victim of an aneurysm in the year 1869, he was working on a work that sought to explain the relations between magnetism and spiritism. At that time, it is estimated that his doctrine was already followed by about 8 million followers. Many scholars of the subject call Spiritism the third revelation, with the first being Moses and the second Jesus Christ. This third would be the revelation of modernity, with the earth already evolved to receive this doctrine that would explain humanity. In this sense, he merged ideas such as evolutionism with the theory that humanity evolves. Because with each reincarnation, beings have the chance to return better and the sense of justice. He managed to produce a doctrine that was in the spirit of his time, that is, modernity that denied religions as dogmas and ended up adapting religious mentality to a scientific and philosophical mentality. That was his pretension. Some historians say this about the subject. Allan Kardec did not see Spiritism as a religion, but rather as a doctrine that combined science, philosophy, and spirituality. For Kardec, Spiritism aimed to overcome 2 impasses of modernity: the dogmatic religion that fell into fatalism in the idea that things happen because God wanted it that way, without seeking logical and rational explanations, and atheistic and utilitarian science that did not perceive the deeper values of humanity. In his proposition, Allan Kardec ended up bringing a doctrine based on the belief in post-mortem phenomena, and this is significant because initially science was not interested in it. He wanted to extend the very positivist science of the time to an understanding of the ineffable world. What was scientific but also philosophical, because there was a moral behind it. In Kardecism, God is the principle of all things, a vital force that organizes the cosmos and has a morality that implies values of justice. These are Kardec's most renowned works. The Spirits book, published in 1857, this masterpiece delves deep into spiritual inquiry, offering profound insights that transcend traditional beliefs. A thought-provoking exploration of the human condition and the mysteries of the spiritual realm. And the Medium's book. Ideal for those actively engaged in spiritual practices, this invaluable guide provides practical insights into mediumship and spiritual communication. Whether you're a novice or an experienced practitioner, discover practical wisdom to enhance your spiritual journey. There's also a movie about Allan Kardec, which, if I'm not mistaken, is available on Netflix. Personally, I found the movie to be quite poor. It portrays Allan Kardec as a flawless, enlightened figure, almost as if he were wearing a red cape and could fly. However, the movie does provide some insight into this man, who indeed played a crucial role in shaping our understanding of the spirit world. Unfortunately, this realm remains largely unexplored and under-researched from a scientific perspective. Had you heard of Allan Kardec before? Are you familiar with his works? Have you ever had any experience with spirits? Share your experience with our community in the comments. Show that we are not alone on this journey. Leave your like and a fraternal hug.